So in this video, we're going to be talking about topic 7 review, which is fraction addition and subtraction. We're going to start with 4 examples of fraction addition, and then we'll go into 4 examples of fraction subtraction, okay? The first example I wanted to start with is something that you guys did in 4th grade. So we added together fractions with like or common denominators already. So as a quick review, the number on the top is the numerator, the number on the bottom is the denominator. You'll see some other examples where we have mixed numbers, where we have a whole number and a fraction. So a mixed number is actually more than one. When we have a regular fraction with just a numerator and denominator, where the numerator is smaller than the denominator, it's less than 1. Okay, so we're going to go through and talk about how to add like fractions. Then we're going to go through and talk about how to add unlike fractions. Okay. So for the first example, like fractions, what you need to do on like fractions is you're actually only going to be adding together the numerator. The denominator, if it's already the same, you just leave it the same. So it's going to be something thirds. We don't know what the numerator is going to be yet. So when we add the numerators together, you just add from left to right. So 2 plus 2 is 4. Now earlier I said that when your numerator is smaller than your denominator, you have a fraction that is less than 1. In this example, our numerator is greater than the denominator. So we know that this is going to be more than 1. And we're going to end up turning that into a mixed number right now. So we're going to turn that into a mixed fraction. So the very first thing we need to think of is how many times could I count by 3s to get to 4? Okay, so we're going to rote count by 3s to see if we can get closest to 4. 3, 6, 9. Okay, 6 and 9 are too many. So what we can determine is that 3 only goes into 4 one time. So 1 times 3 is 3. Now, to figure out what your numerator is going to be, 1 times 3 is 3. So you're going to subtract 4 minus 3 to figure out what your numerator will be in your final answer. So that leaves us with 1, and 4 minus 3 is 1 over 3. So your answer for 2/3 plus 2/3 is either 4/3 or 1 and 1/3. So we reduced or simplified this improper fraction into a mixed number. Okay. The second one we're going to do, we're going to be talking about adding a mixed number to a mixed number. So in this example, what we can do since we're adding is we're going to take our whole numbers and we're going to add those together first. So 1 plus 2. Then we're going to take our fractions and we're going to add our fractions together next. So 1/4 plus 3/4. Okay. So what we did is we put the fractions into parentheses to just make sure that we're keeping that number separate. We're going to add the whole numbers and then we'll add the fractions together to get our final answer. 1 plus 2 is 3 plus 1/4 plus 3/4, which is similar to what we did here because we already have a like denominator. So 1 plus 3 is 4 for our numerator, and then our denominator remains the same since they are the same. So your answer is 3 and 4/4. Now you might notice something, that 4/4 is actually equal to 1 whole. So what that really means is 3 plus 1 whole, which is 4. So in this example, since we separated out the whole numbers and the fractions to add them all together, even though it's a multi-step process, we eventually came up with our answer of 4 wholes. Okay. On the third example, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding together unlike fractions. So we'll do the same thing that we did in example 2, which is add the whole numbers together. We'll separate out the fractions, so that way we can figure out a common denominator. It's a little bit easier than turning it into an improper fraction, then multiplying by a common denominator, and then simplifying that back out. Okay, so let me see here. So the first thing we're going to do, like I said, is we're going to be adding together the whole numbers like we did in example 2. So our whole numbers are 1 and 1, so 1 plus 1. And then we're going to be adding together our fractions. Okay, so 1/2 plus 1/3. You have 1 1/2, 1 and 1/3. So our numbers didn't go anywhere. I just wanted to show you that. It's not like the numbers disappeared. Okay. In class, we figured out how to find a common denominator, which was to list the multiples of both denominators. So the numbers of 2 and then the numbers of 3. So we're going to rote count by those. So our factors of 2 are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And then our factors of 3 are 3, 6, 9, 12. We don't need to go any further. And when we do this, we are looking for the least common number. So we're looking for the lowest number that is the same in both of these examples, which is 6. Okay? So we can figure out that 2 times 1, 2, 3 is equal to 6. And then 3 times 1, 2 is equal to 6. Okay? So our common denominator will be 6. What we need to do now is we need to multiply 2 by whatever factor it is to make this a common denominator of 6. Okay? So I'm just going to make a little bit more room here. So up here we figured out that 2 times 3 is 6. So we're going to be multiplying 2 times 3. When you are multiplying and finding a common denominator, remember, whatever you do to the denominator, you must do to the numerator. So that means we're going to be multiplying 1/2 by 3 over 3. Okay? For 1/3, we need to figure out 3 times what is equal to 6. So we figured out here 3 times 2 is 6. And again, whatever you do to the denominator, you must do to the numerator. Okay? We're going to go through and solve now. So I'm going to bring down all these numbers. So 1 plus 1 is 2 plus, and inside our parentheses is where we're going to figure out our fractions right now. 1 times 3 is 3. 2 times 3 is 6. We are adding, so we're bringing down that same operation. And then we're going to do this second set of fractions to find our common denominator. 1 times 2 is 2. 3 times 2 is 6. So now you can actually go through and add 2. And then we're adding 3/6 and 2/6, which is actually equal to 5/6. So you only added together the numerators, your denominator stayed the same. So your answer for this equation is 2 and 5/6. In our last example, I wrote down a common denominator, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this. So I'm going to change this to 5/4. The reason why I'm changing it to 5/4, you'll see in a second. So first thing we're going to do, we only have one mixed number, so we can just put this whole number by itself, okay? We don't have a whole number with 5/4. This is an improper fraction, but you'll see why I changed it in a second. So we're going to rewrite our fractions now. So 1 plus 3/8 plus 5/4. Okay? Do we have a common denominator? No. So we need to go through and figure out what factors would work. Now, 8, we'll list our factors. 8, 16, 24, 32. And then our factors of 4. 4, 8, 12. We don't need to go any further because we already have a common denominator here in our factors. So what you'll notice is 8 is the lowest common number, the lowest common factor. So we need to figure out what we're multiplying by, okay? 8 times 1 is 8. 8 times 1, 2 is 8. And then again, the reason why we did this is so we can remember what we're multiplying by when we bring it back into our equation, okay? So 3/8. 8 times 1 is 8, so we are going to have a common denominator of 8. Okay, so you'll multiply this by 1 over 1, because 8 times 1 equals 8. On this side, we realize that 8 times 2 equals 8. So we're going to multiply 4 times 2 to get to 8 as our common denominator. And then whatever you do to the denominator, you have to do the numerator as well. Okay, so we're multiplying that side by 2 over 2. So we're going to go through and start to solve. So right now we have 1 plus 3 times 1 is 3. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 5 times 2 is 10 over 4 times 2, which is 8. Okay, go through and add them together. 1 plus 3 eighths and 10 eighths. You now have a common denominator, so your denominator is not going to change. So we're going to leave it over 8. And 3 plus 10 is 13. So we're going to say that's equal to 1 and 13 eighths. Now here's the thing. You notice that your numerator is bigger than your denominator. So we're going to have to figure out how to simplify this improper fraction into a mixed number and add it to the 1. So it is a little bit complicated, but we'll get there. So 1, I'm going to make some room right here. So 1 and 13 eighths. We're going to do the same thing that we did up here where we turn the mixed number, improper fraction into a mixed number. So what this really is saying is 1 plus 13 eighths. To figure out what your mixed number is going to be, you got to figure out how many times 8 goes into 13. We can use the factors here to realize that 8 times 2 is 16, and that's too many times. So we're going to rewrite it as 1 plus 8 goes into 13 one time. And then to figure out what your numerator is, you subtract 8 from 13 because 1 times 8 is 8. You're leaving your denominator the same, okay? So that equals 2, and 13 minus 8 is 5. 5 eighths. It's a little smushed at the bottom. But so your total answer, your full answer for all of that work we did was 2 and 5 eighths. You can do it also the way that we did it in our notes, which was to turn both numbers into improper fractions, multiply, and then simplify from there. But you can do it this way as well. So we're going to move to fraction subtraction now.